The Cowboys are still doing it. They are fueling the rumors around offensive lineman Terence Steele and what his future looks like with the Cowboys. We will dive into that tonight, but we will also dive into several wide receiver updates, including Antonio Callaway being released. And we will also talk about Jerry Jones' underwhelming, disappointing, yet unsurprising announcement about the Ring of Honor. So let's get into it. And thank you for being here. Here we go. What is up, everyone, and welcome into A to Z Sports Dallas Primetime. I'm your host, Mauricio Rodriguez, streaming with you live every Sunday through Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central here on Dallas On Demand Sports Talk Network with a lot more content coming your way. Make sure that you check out a2csports.com/Dallas. And as always, remember that Primetime is brought to you by our friends over at freemanmazda.net. We will talk more about them and the ride of the week in a few moments here on the show. But before we do any of that, though, let's get into some Cowboys updates. Tonight is a fun show. Shouldn't be too long between you and I, but I think that we are going to dive into several updates across the entire roster that seem somewhat relevant, including what Jerry Jones said about Terence Steele. We're going to dive into some of the wide receiver news because let's say it. I think the last night's show aged very well. We talked about how the Cowboys had to move on from N'Keal Harry. I'm just spoiling the show. I'm getting ahead of myself. They had to move on from Antonio Callaway, and the Cowboys did. I mean, a little bit late. A little bit early. Sorry, not late. Pretty quickly, I think is the right word for it. I'm trying to get the graphics here loaded for you. But we're going to start with Terence Steele and what Jerry Jones said about Terence Steele, because the title of the show is the Cowboys keep fueling rumors about key player. And that's because Mike McCarthy has mentioned it at some point this offseason, Stephen Jones as well. And now it was Jerry Jones talking to the media as the Cowboys announced that they're going to host the Shrine Bowl game for college football in 2024. So they had a couple of media appearances right there quickly. And among the many things that were said, Jerry Jones touched on Terence Steele's future. And the quote, according to Michael Gelkin from Dallas Morning News, was, "I'm liking his flex, that we are mentally thinking about," which is kind of a weird sentence. But at the end of the day, Terence Steele is not out there doing the thing at full speed or anything like that, or taking part of the team drills, because he's dealing with an injury and he's rehabbing from that injury. But still, the Cowboys are mentally thinking, I think it's a funny way to say it, about Terence Steele potentially moving inside. The full quote adds, "I think that the fact that those tall guys with that kind of length, arm length especially, I like the fact that they haven't been ruled out inside. I see how that can work." And of course, Jerry's not only talking about Steele himself, he's talking about, obviously, Asim Richards, Matt Waletzko, Josh Ball, all of these Cowboys players that are former tackles, and they're getting their chance at left guard. So I think this is just another clue about what, in my opinion, seems to be maybe not a fully made decision, but at least a goal, like at least a North Star. If we had a inside view at the Cowboys game plan, so if we could get inside their minds, I do think that their goal is pretty clear at offensive line, whether we agree with it or not. I think that for them, the best case scenario that they want to play out is having Terence Steele not only switch positions, but switch sides. So that would mean him taking over left guard, and having Tyron Smith stay at right tackle where he ended the season last year. Do I like that potential move by the Cowboys? No, I don't. No, I do not. Uh, but do I see the sense in it? We have talked about it before here on the show. I kind of do. But my biggest point tonight is I know that it's not a fully made decision. I know that the Cowboys want to see how things play out in training camp and all of that. But if I had to bet what the Cowboys want out of this whole offensive line uh, puzzle that they're trying to solve, is having Terence Steele switch to left guard and having Tyron Smith be the right tackle. And then by process of elimination, have Tyler Smith, who has reportedly taken every snap at left tackle, be the left tackle of the future and the present. I know it's weird. I know that there's a lot to be figured out yet, but I just think we have seen hint after hint after hint about it, that even if things end up in a different way, I think what they want to happen is exactly that. And I'm basing that on the fact that reports indicate that Tyler is taking all of the first team snaps at left tackle. Reports also indicate that the Cowboys are trying out Chuma Edoga, Matt Waletzko, Asim Richards at left guard. So that's where you're seeing the heaviest rotation taking place. And Michael Gelkin, who in my opinion is one of the very best Cowboys insiders out there, he's pretty accurate in everything that he says, has suggested that it would be, not suggested, he has said this and tweeted this out and written about it. And I quote, it would be a surprise, close quotes, if Tyron Smith, if healthy, is not the starting right tackle. So that Gelkin goes out and says that, it's meaningful, in my opinion. I think that's what the Cowboys want. I'm not sure if I love it. I have my big time doubts about it and questions about it. I know that the Cowboys have made some controversial offensive line decisions that have played out to their favor here and there. It's a tough world to figure out, the trenches world. So my question from me to you is, do you like or dislike Terence Steele, the idea of Terence Steele playing left guard? Whether it happens or not, do you like or dislike that idea? Let me know in the chat. And with that, let me say hi. By the way, welcome everyone into the show. You guys know how I do things. Sometimes I just go on that initial rant and then I start saying hi. This is mostly between you and I. I'm going to lift the curtain a little bit here behind the scenes. For those people who are maybe not available to watch the show live or are not able to do it, that way they don't have to go through a long time of live comments that they're not around for. Let's see what you guys have to say in the chat. Keep Steele at right tackle since Lance Bell, and that would be my preferred choice as well. If I were the Cowboys coach, and obviously never will be, but I would have Tyron Smith play at left tackle, Tyler at left guard, and Terence Steele at right tackle. Because I would be aiming for the best group of five, but I would also be aiming for them to be at their best positions. And I think that Terence Steele is a better tackle, right tackle, specifically right tackle, than Tyron Smith. And I think Tyron Smith is clearly the best left tackle of the team, even though I understand the concerns about his health. And Terence Steele, let him do his thing at right tackle. I think that he was pretty good at right tackle the last year. Gregory goes with no. Bruce got the toxic use, says dislike. Toxic Tom says, I hate that our general manager, 80-year-old life alert, oh man, Toxic Tom is bringing it, is talking about matters that a coach should make. John says no. Katharina says dislike. Hey, Mo, Mark, Andrew. And I will say this. I also sigh and roll my eyes here and there at Jerry Jones, the coach, when he makes those coach comments. But I will say I'm over it. Like, I know it's not him pushing the coaches for him to be the right tackle. I think it's more of him just wanting to make those comments and, feel like he's in it, etc. I have a lot of complaints about Jerry Jones, man. I have a lot of complaints about Jerry Jones later on the show. For those of you who read my article today for atcsports.com, you already read some of those. I would love for you to check out that article at atcsports.com/Dallas. But I do have some some complaints, and we're gonna get to that right around here on the segment on this segment of the show you're watching on the screen right now. I'll give you a hint for those of you who are listening to the podcast. It's a picture of Jimmy Johnson, and it's a picture of Ring of Honor crossed out. We'll get to that in a moment. So a lot of people dislike right now. Oh man, Lance, thank you, man. That means a lot. He says, I love your article. Thank you, sir. Thank you. I really think that I put my heart onto that one. I was frustrated, man, when that happened. We'll get to that. I appreciate it, Lance. And I think it was Gregory who said that he had read it too. So I appreciate you as well, sir. Thank you for being here on the show, by the way. So just close out the Terence Steele thing. I think that's what the Cowboys want. I don't know if it will actually happen. For one, Tyron Smith has to be healthy for that to happen. And who knows what Terence Steele's timetable looks like exactly. One of the things that I believe influences the Cowboys' decision here is, are they more concerned about plugging Terence Steele back into the lineup, say in week 3 and week 4, and have him take over right tackle and mess with that continuity? Would they rather avoid that than avoiding having to change positions for Terence Steele? I wonder about that. I don't know if that plays into their decision making at all. I think that they consider it, but I'm also not a fan of the idea of a guy coming back from injury, and having to switch positions and having to switch sides and having to go through that whole adaptation process while not even fully healthy. We'll see. Ladies and gentlemen, moving on a little bit here. We'll stay with the news and then move on to the topic that I can see has everyone frustrated. Man, I hate when that happens. I don't understand how that happens with this. I think it's a mouse. I think that I clicked something in the mouse that I shouldn't click in, and then it takes me one tab back on my side of things. So I apologize about that. But let's get into the wide receiver updates here really quickly. Last night we talked about Antonio Callaway getting into trouble, and I had like this opinionated show about why the Cowboys should move on from Antonio Callaway, about how it was time to move on from that project because it really represented very little reward compared to the risk that he entailed. And my whole take was, just move on. Move on from Antonio Callaway. It's not going to hurt the team. It's not going to hurt like a high reward bet that you made. Just move on from a player that has been given second chances since he was at college and has failed every time that he's gotten them. That was my logic last night. The Cowboys seemed to agree. We're going to charge them for some primetime consulting services. We're going to charge them $1, I think. And Mo, you had me afraid you went to the shadow realm, says Bruce got the toxic use. Mark Aaron says, I told you he forgot to charge the computer. You guys are having fun. Hey, this is on brand for primetime nowadays, man. Having like one slight technical malfunction. I'm going to ask A to C Sports to give me a full-time producer on studio. He's going to leave here on the studio, and we're just going to make sure that doesn't happen again. But anyways, all kidding aside, Callaway has been released by the Cowboys right away. They didn't second guess their decision. They signed Tyron Johnson. I don't think that Callaway or Johnson are players that you would project to be a part of the 53-man roster. But it was interesting that the Cowboys hosted other players that they are apparently considering. At the very least, the Cowboys still have 2 open roster spots at this moment. They are at 88. And those additional players are N'Keal Harry, who is the biggest name in here. And we're going to talk about one adjective that is being thrown around for N'Keal Harry. Lean Bowden, which was a very fun player at college. Jacob Eason, who I very badly wanted to succeed in his first career stop, which happened at Indianapolis, I think. Bryce Perkins, Jordan Miller, and Thacarius Keys is the other two cornerbacks at the end of that list right there. I think N'Keal Harry has been described by many as an interesting free agent possibility. Interesting is a weird word. I've tried to eliminate interesting from my vocabulary. I have struggled with it ever since I watched that Captain Fantastic movie. I don't know if you've watched it, but those of you who have watched it, there's a scene in which the father of this family, which is growing up in the wilds, and he's teaching them everything. And, don't worry, I'm not going to spoil the movie or anything like that. But basically, that's how it starts. The family is growing up in the wilds, and they're reading these engineering, super advanced books and medical books, and they're just doing all of that. At one point of the movie, he says, like, interesting is a non-word. And I think that's like the only way to describe N'Keal Harry, because he's a former first-round pick, but he's the 32nd pick of his NFL draft. And he has not played as a first-round player at all to start off his career. But it gets even weirder. Like, when you look at credible New England Patriots analysts and reporters and insiders and beat writers, they don't even seem to agree as to who was N'Keal Harry on those disappointing, quote unquote, bust years when he was with the Patriots, because they say that, N'Keal Harry was getting open, go watch the tape, blah, blah, blah. It was the Patriots offense, it was the quarterback, all of that. Obviously, a former player for Arizona State. Harry could have that first-round talent. I mean, many people agreed that he was one of the best receivers of his respective draft class. Didn't succeed in Chicago either. So N'Keal Harry is a first-round wide receiver. Yes, he's going to be mentioned as an interesting player a whole lot. I just don't know what that means. And I'm going to say, before we move on, that I think that if he is signed, I don't know if he's a player that you would assume is making the roster. I'm not sure, because the Cowboys have a solid group of 3 starting receivers, plus a third-round pick they're hoping he bounces back, plus Simi Fehoko, which has been an enticing project the Cowboys have worked in for a while now, plus a solid group of UDFAs. And when I say that, I don't say that in the way that, oh yeah, one of these players is going to be awesome and he's going to be the next Miles Austin or something like that. But just at a league perspective, people have praised what the Cowboys did on undrafted free agency. So it's not like N'Keal Harry would be an immediate roster lock. And I wanted to get that point across. Let's see what you guys have to say. Pablo says Harry would be an interesting. Notice that key word. And I'm not judging. I'm just saying that I think we are using that word a lot when it comes to N'Keal Harry, because we just don't know who he is. Harry would be an interesting developmental project, says Pablo, but I think Cowboys wide receiver coach isn't the best. Robert Prince is the wide receiver coach. Cowboys couldn't get much contributions from their young receivers, Fehoko. And I will say, I think Fehoko was injury related more than anything else. Tolbert was not great. UDFA Houston didn't do much last year. I don't know if those are reasons why I would say that a wide receiver isn't the best. Because I will say this, like, UDFAs usually don't do much. Like, the fact that UDFA made the roster was enough success for you to go, oh, damn, he's got something going on. Tolbert was definitely a bummer. Hopefully he changes that up, but tough to know if it's on the player, if it's on the actual coach. I'm not sure. It's tough to evaluate, because from another point of view, you can also say, man, that wide receiver 1 jump that CeeDee Lamb took last year, do you give credit to the coach for that or not? And it's one of those things that from the outside looking in, it's almost impossible to answer accurately. But that's an interesting point. Once you drafted, says Toxic Tom, your draft status is irrelevant. Tape doesn't lie. Harry is not a good NFL wide receiver. Now, the interesting point here is people like Alan Lazard, who is one of the best analysts out there, especially for Patriots stuff, insists that the tape doesn't lie and that Harry was actually good, but the Patriots wasted him. So I'm really looking forward to seeing if they do sign him. We'll see if he is signed. Where does he position himself during training camp? I do not think that the Tyron Johnson signing eliminates the possibility of landing somebody like Harry, because I think that while Tyron Johnson is likely a camp body, and N'Keal Harry is somebody that could fight his way into the roster at the very least, and then see what happens from there. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, let's get to what we all want to talk about. Let's get to it. Oh, by the way, just going to add this as a quick note because it happened a little bit late. It was reported a little bit late. But Jordan Lewis expected to start training camp on PUP. This was also mentioned today. He mentioned, I think Stephen Jones is who mentioned it. He is recovering from that foot injury. He's expected to start at PUP. And I think that, the biggest winner there is Kelvin Joseph. We had a show about how those two could be in a competition since Kelvin Joseph was trying out at nickel cornerback. And I think one of those two is going to back up Dayron Bland. I would assume Jordan Lewis is the best option for that. But he's also on a contract year, and he's also dealing with a foot injury. My opinion has not changed on that battle. I still think that Jordan Lewis is the favorite to win that battle. But starting camp on PUP is not helpful. Not helpful for a veteran. We'll see. Lance Bell says Tolbert was hanging out with KJ. I don't know if that's true or not. Oh, no. Man, the YouTube chat sometimes has no chill. I'm not going to go on reading all of that. But yeah, Toxic Tom is right. The main event of the evening. The Ring of Honor announcement. Oh, man. What is one word? What is one word to describe Jerry Jones's stance on the Ring of Honor? Because he announced today that no, if you were wondering, there are no plans to add anybody to the Ring of Honor in 2023. Let me know your one word while you do that. And before I give you mine, I wrote an article with that word in the headline too. Let me talk to you about our friends over at freemanmazda.net. Family-owned business, has been so for over 65 years. You can check out their dealership at Irving, Texas, or you can browse through their website and see their wide range of new and used vehicles over at freemanmazda.net. In there, you can see pictures of every car inside and outside. You can check out the features of each vehicle. And as we do around this time, it is time for us to dive into the Freeman Mazda Ride of the Week. In this case, it is the 2023 Mazda CX-30 2.5S preferred all-wheel drive. It starts at $30,205. It's got Apple CarPlay / Android Auto, rain sensing wipers, adaptive cruise control, a blind spot monitor, and a fuel economy of 26 miles per gallon in the city. That goes up to 33 when you are on the highway. So make sure you check it out over at freemanmazda.net. That being said, let's get to the Jerry Jones, Jimmy Johnson conversation. What is one word? What is one word to describe that? Petty, says Toxic Tom. Small. He's cheating. He's giving us more than one word. Snake, says Bruce. Oh, man, snake. Pissed, says Lance Bell. Danny Savage says, oh, no. I don't know about that. Loser, says Toxic Tom. He just he just keeps adding words to the mix right now. I appreciate the effort. The word that I used for an ADC Sports article was pathetic. I had to go with pathetic. I think it is, man. Listen, you guys know that I've got, and I think that this happens with many Cowboys fans. Like, you have to have some conflicting feelings about Jerry Jones. On one side, we know about a lot of quote unquote bad stuff, but we also kind of know that he's somebody that had pretty much every NFL fan at the palm of his hand when he was giving that Hall of Fame speech back when he was inducted into Canton. And then there's this thing about the Ring of Honor, man. I wrote an article in 2021 right after Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones had shared a very wholesome, heartwarming moment in a Fox Sports TV broadcast, national TV, in which Jerry Jones says, yes, Jerry will be in the Ring of Honor. I don't know if he said it because at the time he felt it. I don't know if he said it because he knew that he was on national TV. But months later, 1 year later, I think it was less than 1 year later, he said that there was no decision made after affirming it on national TV. But 1 year later, he changed his mind, or maybe he knew that, oh, very few people are actually going to watch this interview compared to what happened at Fox. So it's no problem. I can just walk my opinion back and take it back. And now it's another year in which he is not inducting Jimmy Johnson into the Ring of Honor. And it's stupid. It's pathetic. There's no logical reason why you would wait so long. Troy Aikman is in that Ring of Honor. Emmitt Smith, Larry Allen, Michael Irvin, Darren Woodson. All of them are up there. How can you pretend like you have to think about Jimmy Johnson's credentials to be there? It makes no sense, and fans see through it. That's what most messes with me. Like, Jerry knows he's not changing our minds, or maybe he's hoping that the next generation of fans maybe does not realize how important Jimmy Johnson was for the history of the franchise. And I get it. Success in sports and football causes these time of rifts all of the time. They say that even Tom Brady and Bill Belichick didn't get along when Brady left New England. We have seen that time and time again across the history of sports. With these successful dynasties, relationships can go sour really quickly because they want the credit. Jimmy Johnson wanted the credit. Jerry Jones wanted the credit. And I even understand those poisonous comments like the one that Jerry made that one time about how 500 players could have won the Super Bowl with a team that he built. But we all know that it wasn't the team that Jerry built. I mean, I'm also not saying that he had nothing to do with it, but it was Jimmy Johnson who had the recruiting / scouting prowess that built the Cowboys. It is he who ended up changing the way that the 4-3 defense was played in the first place. He incorporated the speed factor like he did when he was with the Miami Hurricanes. He did the same in the NFL, and it proved to be the right recipe. When he left, the Cowboys won another Super Bowl with his own team, with like the team that Jimmy Johnson literally built. You cannot pretend like he was not a part of that history. And what I was going to say is, I get it. I get that it happened in the first place. I don't get how years later, decades later, you don't get over it. I don't get how you share that moment in the Hall of Fame ceremony. I don't get all of that, and how you forget about it when it just happened in 2021. I really don't. It's frustrating. It's pathetic because I think that there's also a secondary unwanted effect, but it tarnishes the value of the Ring of Honor. Like, if they induct somebody else, as much as you and I love Jason Witten, and as much as we could love DeMarcus Ware getting his name up there, or say that Tony Romo is going to cause a lot of controversy if he ends up there. But what? How are we gonna go through a Ring of Honor ceremony if it's not Jimmy Johnson first? And the worst thing about it is, and I know it's personal, by the way. Danny Savage is saying it's personal, read between the lines. It's still dumb. It's still dumb, in my opinion. Like that's part of it. You're not gonna get to say that he does it in 2030. I'm just putting a number out there, a year out there. You know that he's gonna have the perfect PR reason of why he waited this long. Oh, I wanted it to be in the 70th anniversary of the Dallas Cowboys because this and that. And he's going to try to save some face. I just hope that when it does happen, when Jimmy Johnson's name goes up there, I hope that we don't make it about the wait. I hope that we make it about Jimmy Johnson because he at least has earned that and he deserves that at the very least. And I will add one more thing. When Jerry Jones said on that Fox broadcast, when the two of them were together, when Jerry Jones said, yes, Jimmy Johnson will be in the Ring of Honor, all that Jimmy Johnson was able to respond was, while I'm alive, at this point, I'm not entirely sure that Jimmy Johnson knows the answer to that. I'm not sure Jerry Jones knows the answer to whether or not it will happen while Jerry is alive. Because if we're being real, we don't know what the decision will be from Jerry Jones. I think Jimmy Johnson's name is going to be up there eventually, whether it's Jerry's decision or somebody else. It's going to get up there. It's just dumb that every year that goes by, we know that it's one more year late. We know that this should have happened a long, long time ago. It sucks. It's disappointing. And I had to include it on tonight's show because, man, we should be louder and louder about it because it's getting pathetic and more pathetic and more pathetic. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning into the show tonight. I've got some movie tickets, so I got to run. I'm going to watch Spider-Man. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning into Prime Time. Thanks so much for giving me a little bit of your time. And remember that Prime Time is brought to you by our friends over at FreemanMazda.net. Do me a favor and hit the thumbs up. Let's get those likes up because they help me a lot in putting this show in front of more and more Cowboys fans because apparently the algorithm likes it. So do me that favor. Enjoy the rest of your Monday night and I will see you el día de mañana. Muchísimas gracias.